So let's have a little chat, shall we? Let's have a little occult chat. This is your host, The Occult View. This is your host, The Occult View. So let's have a chat. I was having a conversation with a friend today, and we were talking about the current situation that's going on here in the DC area. He lives somewhere else, but he was, like everybody in the country, has a lot of opinions about what's happening in Washington D.C., right? And what he was basically saying to me is that President Trump, is going to, in so many words, declare an insurrection if he can't get Congress to do the things that he wants them to do. And one of the things that we've heard, I'm going to say in Rumorville, as rumors, is that Trump wants to remain on as president for a third term, and that somehow he would declare martial law and declare himself emperor of the United States of America. Here's the problem with that. I'm not even going to get into of the legalities of why he can't do that. That's not important. But what's more important and what's more disturbing even than that, or the thought of that, which is too gruesome to contemplate, is the fact that people are not paying attention to the patterns and the signs. See, I've always told you that as an occultist, I am an occultist and a spiritualist. And as an occultist, I look at patterns. I look at numerical patterns. I look at behavioral patterns. I look at spiritual patterns. And then from that, I make my hypothesis spiritually. I make my determination on what's really going on. And what is very disturbing is that people don't even realize you are caught in the loop of hell. You think hell is somewhere out there? No, hell is right inside of you, just like heaven is inside of you. But 350 million, well, maybe not that much, but half of this country, you're caught in a loop of hell and you don't even realize it. Let me tell you what I'm talking about. I was telling my friend, I was saying, hey, listen, what's happening now has happened before. But when you don't have spiritual discernment, when you don't have intuition, and when you are easily distracted, you won't see the signs. So many of you are so wrapped up into, look at what he doing, talking about Trump. Look at what they're doing, talking about white people. Looking at what you're so wrapped up in that you don't even realize you're caught in hell's loop. You're caught in a loop. What do they call it? Dante's Inferno? Being caught in a cycle of hell? You all are caught in Dante's Inferno. Let me make sure that I'm saying that correctly. Let me make sure. Yeah, Dante's Inferno and the nine levels of hell. or something like that. And I may be getting some of it wrong, but that's not really the point that I'm trying to make. You all are caught in a loop. You're caught in a time loop. You're caught in a psychological terrorism loop. You're caught in hell and you don't even realize it. You're caught in a never ending nightmare. Back in 2006, back in 2007, back in 2008, the world was in the same position then that it is now. But it was just different players. That's the whole gist of it. It was different players. That's it. But it was the same game, different players. And we were under the same numerical dimensions. But people have been brainwashed, they have been hypnotized subconsciously to forget. And I'm talking about people that can actually remember what happened all of those years ago when George W. Bush was elected as the president of the United States. Remember, they said he stole the election from Al Gore. Where is Al Gore these days? You never even hear anything about Al Gore or George Bush. Let me look him up right quick. Where is Al Gore these days? I guess he's around. Let me get back to my commentary. So, we are up under the same numerical dimensions that we were up under during that time of President Bush's controversial, um, polarizing, prolific presidency. And he won 2 terms. He won 2 terms, President Bush, the son, not the father. And remember, they said he stole the election from Al Gore. President Bush was the Trump of the early 2000s. He was enemy number one at that time, remember? Everybody hated Bush, myself included. Everybody hated him. When he got in office, not long after he was elected, 9/11 popped off. Then, after 9/11, the United States went into Afghanistan to overthrow the Taliban and to overthrow Al Qaeda. Then, after that, they decided that Iraq was actually a threat again, and they overthrew the Iraqi government and they implemented shock and awe. This was all in the early 2000s. And then ultimately, they changed the regime in Iraq. And a lot of people, a lot of Iraqis are saying that the government is worse now than it was under Saddam Hussein's rule, allegedly. This is what I'm hearing from Iraqis. Just on a side note, they invaded Iraq, they overthrew the government, and then put in a government that the people don't really like, from what I'm understanding. They murdered Saddam Hussein, they murdered his family, they murdered all of his associates, and the United States had access to the Middle East in a way that they've always wanted. And it's not because of no oil. It ain't because of no oil. It's because there are spiritual nexus points over in that region of the world. That's connected to Black ancestry. Because we all know that Iraq is actually part of Africa, but that's a whole nother story. That's the untold story that they don't want to tell you. Like they used to tell you that the boogeyman was something that you should be afraid of, but in actuality, the boogeyman was a defense for Black people against racist white people. But then we became bitch made. We started turning on each other, and then the boogeyman turned on us. But that's another form of that's another form of, you know, information. I know I'm crazy, child. I'll take it. But let's continue because I just feel passionate about talking about this. So we had the war in Iraq. We have President Bush, who is a version of Trump of the early 2000s. Now in 2025, we are up under the same dimensional numbers that we were in 2007, I'm sorry, 2006, 2007, and 2008. Remember, in 2006 or 7, I think it was 2006, that is when Rosie O'Donnell's feud began with Donald Trump on a massive level. Let's just we're looking at the numerical system. We're looking at the rituals and the mind control and the psychological loop of hell that people are caught in. See, Donald Trump is just a puppet. He's just a figure, a puppet, a figurine that you all have been bamboozled into worshiping and believing in. But when do you wake up from the dream to realize that it's a nightmare? Not because there's anything personal against Trump, but it should be something personal against you and why you have allowed yourself to become bamboozled over and over again. See, George Bush woke us up just so we could be rocked back to sleep by Obama. Obama rocked us to sleep so we could be woken up or so we could rise up again with Trump coming in doing the things that he's doing. But here's where it gets tricky. In 2007, towards the end of George Bush's tenure as president of the United States, we were up under the vibration of the number 9. 2 plus 7 equals 9. Follow me now. The number 9 is connected with death, rebirth, the darker worlds, the darker goddesses. The number 9 is also connected to the womb. It's also connected to change. And then in 2008, that was a new beginning because you add the 2 and the 8, that brings you out to 10. That brings you that averages out or equals to 10. But remove the 0, that's the number 1. The number 1 signifies new beginnings, new birth, reborn. The number 9 can also be considered as it can also be considered as being reborn as well, but just in a darker way. But in 2007, we were going through the exact same shit that we're going through now. Because right now, when you calculate the year that we're up under now, 2025, what does it come out to? 2 plus 2 equals 4, plus 5 equals the number 9. And I'm not asking anybody to agree with me. I don't give a fuck whether you agree or not. I'm an occultist. And this is what I do. I'm the occult view. I calculate the dimensions and I look at the patterns of behaviors. I look at the patterns of people and how they move. So just like now, we're up under the number 9. We're towards an end because we're getting ready to go into a new beginning on a global level and on an individual level for some of us. Like I'm getting ready to turn 46. So when you add 4 plus 6, that's 10. Take away the 1, that's a new birth, a new beginning. See, life paths, they change all the time. The world's life paths change all the time as well because we're going in and out of different dimensions all the time. So the same shit that was going on in 2007 is going on right now. Let's move it up a little bit. When Trump was elected the first time, no, we're going to have church today. We're going to have dark spiritual church today, and we're going to reveal the dark in order to get to the light. In 2016, 2015, remember how tumultuous things were? Remember when Trump was elected the first time? Right after that, that's when the Me Too movement started. I mean, it started before then, but it really got in full force then. You notice they don't talk about the Me Too movement anymore. They don't talk about that anymore. Do you all notice that? You see what I'm saying? Look at the things that we have forgotten about because we've been too distracted and bamboozled by illusions that we're being fed. Remember, right after, let me go back to 2016, my friend Christopher Barry died. He was a he was a major political figure in the DC area. His father was Marion Barry. They took out Christopher allegedly. I'm going to say allegedly, but I know what's up. They took out Christopher. Then they took out Darren Seals. They still don't know what happened to Darren Seals from Ferguson, Missouri, who would have done a better job probably opening up a school to help black boys than that thing over there in Philadelphia who I won't name, who's making a mockery of himself because he's a deep down, on the low, he's an agent. But that's another story. After Christopher Barry dies, Donald Trump is elected in November. After he's elected in November, DC erupts in chaos. They had the Me Too movements. There was political chaos. People were angry. Remember 2016, when you break it down, 2 plus 1 is 3, plus the 6, you don't add the 0, is 9. That was another ending going into another new beginning in 2017. Remember how tumultuous 2017 was for a lot of us? I know it was for me. It was very tumultuous. It was very difficult because we were all going through our own spiritual evolution at that time. But we're so distracted by what we see in politics and social media, we forget that we go through our own spiritual changes in these frequencies as well. So 2016 averages out, when you break it down, it comes out to the number 9 again, which is an ending, death, rebirth. Then 2017, 2 plus 1, 3 equals 3, plus the 7 equals 10. Take away the 0, and you have a new beginning. But in 2017, we had to actually add the zero to that one because that was the Alpha and the Omega. And I'm not talking about no biblical shit. I'm talking about spiritual stuff. We had the Alpha and the Omega because it was masculine energy. That's all it is. Masculine energy going against feminine energy. That's why we had the Me Too movement. And they pulled on that and they used that. So now we're in 2025. DC has been taken over by the federal government allegedly. Chaos is erupting. The National Guard has been called into DC. They did the same thing back in the early 90s. Have people forgot about that in DC? No, you all are too worried about opening up a fucking go-go museum, which is the last thing you niggas fucking need. But anyway, they did the same exact thing in the early 90s when Sharon Pratt Dixon was the mayor of DC at that time. They called in the National Guard, and to prove it, they put a spotlight on Kennedy Street where I lived. Not far from my family home was a military spotlight because of all of the crime that was going on in DC. DC is full of crime, but there are other things that are at play as well. We're not going to sit here and let this pink elephant just sit in the room and nobody's going to address it. Bullshit. DC is full of crime because you have people, individuals who are more invested in opening up a fucking go-go museum than they are about the crime that's taking place, killing babies and women and innocent people all throughout DC. But that's another story. So the federal government has allegedly taken over the city of DC. DC is fighting back as it should because DC is its own governing entity. But here's the thing. Here's where you all have been getting played. Me too. Do you all remember this is for old time DC people. DC has always been up under the federal government control. They took control away from DC in 1995 when Marion Barry was reelected. Huh. I bet you didn't know that. The DC Home Rule that was established and approved by Congress, I think in 1972, stated that DC was an able bodied governing entity all on its own, where they could govern or we could govern our own town or own city as if it were a state almost, even though it would not be given the same rights and privileges as a state. But in 1995, they kind of repelled that, or not repelled, but repealed that when Marion Barry was reelected after Sharon Pratt Dixon lost, and he was reelected, and they put that federal control board in DC. So Marion Barry was really restricted on some of the things he could do as mayor. And that control board is still there, but people just didn't know it. That is why Trump was able to send the National Guard into DC. Because DC has been up under federal control and they repelled, I keep saying repelled, they repealed the home rule law, but they just didn't tell nobody. What did I say earlier? Psychological games, psychological warfare. Caught in the loop of hell. Does anybody remember all of this? Or are people up under a hypnotic spell where your memory is being wiped and you don't remember these things? Have we forgotten all of this history? Where we're not putting the patterns together. You don't even have to be an occultist. You don't have to be a spiritualist. I don't care what you believe in. Just don't fuck with me. But logically, have we forgot about all of this? And we're sitting up here letting these people play these psychological games with us? So we're up under the same vibrational frequency that we were in 2016, 2007. Now we're back up under that frequency again, and the same games are being played. Back in 2007, 2008, right here on YouTube, and I've talked about this for people who've been around on YouTube for a long time, especially a lot of white people, because you all, you're into these conspiracy theories and stuff like that. Okay. Do you all remember all of the videos on YouTube referencing the 2008 elections, stating that President Bush at the time, George W. Bush, the son, was going to cancel the 2008 elections and declare martial law and declare himself as Emperor of the United States of America? Does anybody remember that? So when I said earlier that there are rumors that Trump is going to basically declare insurrection or martial law if he doesn't get his way with Congress, that was the connection that I was making. That's the pattern. They have you all caught in a loop. You've been through this before. Remember in Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master, remember when Alice and Dan were caught in that dream loop? And then finally Dan said, hey, wait a minute. We've been through this before. Freddy had them caught up in a dream loop to keep them confused, to keep them divided. And it wasn't until Dan realized, hey, wait a minute, we fell asleep. Well, guess what, you guys? You all fell asleep. It's the Freddy Krueger effect. You fell asleep. And now it's time for you to wake up. It doesn't even matter what your political affiliation is at this point. It's not even about disliking or hating Trump. He's a figure, and figures equal figurines. They can be controlled and molded. There's something behind Trump or someone behind him. Because have you noticed online they've been referring to Trump as former president? I've been seeing that. And incidentally, all of those videos that used to talk about George Bush, all of those videos that talked about him canceling the 2008 elections, all of those videos have been scrubbed off of YouTube. You can't find them anymore. Why is that? They've been scrubbed. You all are up under psychological warfare. You're up under psychological terrorism. And you're caught in a loop of hell. This has all happened before. Same stage, different actors. Same stage, different directors. Same stage, different producer. But the only motherfucking person that never changes is the executive producer. They stay the same. And that's the hand behind the curtain. See, this is occultism right here. This is occultism and spiritualism right here. When you can see people for who they are, when you can study these patterns of people, these spiritual patterns, these numerical patterns, we're up under the same frequency. Look it up for yourself. Go back to 2007 and tell me that 2007 wasn't a fucked up year. 2008 wasn't a fucked up year. Remember, that was the year, I think '07 or '08, when Enron went under and they stole all those people's money. Wasn't that when the housing market crashed and people were panicking? They have you all stuck in a lower dimension under psychological warfare. They have you stuck in Dante's Inferno in a certain loop of hell. You've been through this before. So I said all that to say this. If you wake up like I did and you realize that all of this has happened before, why would I be sitting here worried about Trump declaring that martial law all over the place? Why would I be worried about that? Why would I be worried about the threat of Trump trying to do a third term? Because that's the same thing they said with Bush, to inflict more fear and psychological warfare. It doesn't matter what they say, and it doesn't matter what they show. What matters is what actually happens. That's what matters. And none of that shit happened. Bush did not cancel the 2008 elections. He did not declare martial law. He did not declare himself emperor, and neither will Trump. Anyway, that's really all I had to say. This is the occult view. And I just wanted to get that off my chest because people are asleep. You follow people blindly. You follow politicians blindly. You follow celebrities blindly. You follow trends blindly. You follow entities blindly. But the one thing that's inside of you that you've been neglecting is your spirit. We are caught in a loop. And a lot of us are waking up. These are the psychological games that they play to keep you in fear, to keep you divided, to keep you hating other races, to keep you hating the opposite sex. Anyway, that's all I have to say. Thanks for listening. That's it.